Admit it, the strange tale of Depsey the rabbit. Chapter 35. Reaching Willy. The lamplight cast a warm circle around Willy's drawing desk, the rest of the studio fading into comfortable shadows. Animation paper lay scattered across the work surface, some finished, some half erased, all bearing the careful marks of someone who refused to settle for good enough. The light box hummed quietly beneath the current frame, illuminating every pencil stroke with clinical precision. Willy hunched over his work, shoulders rounded from hours at the desk. His hand moved with practiced economy, adding the smallest details to Depsey's bow tie as the cartoon rabbit splashed through a sun-dappled park pond. The old-fashioned swimming costume, striped and modest, like something from a seaside postcard, needed to flutter just so in the animated breeze. Come on," he muttered, erasing a line for the third time. "The fabric has to catch the light properly." His coffee had gone cold hours ago, joining the graveyard of ceramic mugs that marked his late-night sessions. The studio's wall clock read 2:47 a.m., but Willy barely noticed time when he was deep in a scene. This one mattered. They all mattered, but this one, this perfect summer day at the pond, felt especially important to get right. A small framed photograph sat propped against his pencil jar, angled so he could glance at it while working. His wife Sarah smiled out from the picture, her arms wrapped around two gap-toothed grandchildren. The photo was creased from handling, a talisman he'd carried through 40 years of animation work. Sarah had been gone for 3 years now, but her voice still echoed in his head during these quiet hours. "Pour your heart into it, Willy. That's what makes it real." He leaned back, stretching his cramped fingers. The park scene was nearly complete, Depsey mid-splash, Chuck cheering from the shore, Lucy arranging a picnic on the checkered blanket. In the background, tiny figures populated the scene with life. Families on benches, children feeding ducks, an elderly professor reading beneath a tree. Every character, no matter how small, received Willy's attention. The professor's wire-rimmed spectacles were barely visible at this scale, but Willy had drawn them anyway. Details mattered. They always mattered. "Just need to get the water droplets right," he whispered, selecting a fresh pencil. "Each one catches the sunlight differently." The droplets were geometric perfection in cartoon physics, perfect spheres that defied gravity just long enough to create magic. Willy had spent decades perfecting such impossibilities, making the unreal feel more authentic than reality. His characters lived in a world where friendship was pure, where conflicts resolved with laughter, where every day could be a perfect day if you just... Light erupted from the corner of the studio. Willy jerked back from his desk, pencil clattering to the floor. A piece of equipment he didn't recognize, some kind of projector, hummed to life in the shadows. He'd never seen it before, certainly hadn't turned it on. The light it cast was harsh and cold, throwing his careful drawings into stark relief. "What the hell?" He stood, legs stiff from hours of sitting. "Who's there?" Static filled the air, then cleared to reveal voices, familiar voices. Creator, can you hear us?" Willy's hand found the edge of his desk. That was Chuck's voice, impossible, but unmistakably Chuck Chatterbox, the eager, optimistic yellow box he'd been drawing for 20 years. But Chuck was a drawing. Chuck was lines on paper, movements planned on exposure sheets, voice provided by actors in recording booths. "We've been trying to reach you," came another voice. Depsey, definitely Depsey, with that slight lisp from his cartoon buck teeth. "Please, we need to tell you something." "I'm hallucinating," Willy said aloud, as if speaking the words would make it true. "I've been working too long. I'm seeing things." But the light from the projector solidified, and suddenly Chuck's familiar round form appeared in the beam. Not a recording, not archived footage. Chuck, moving with the spontaneous energy of life, looking directly at him. "Creator!" Chuck exclaimed, his perpetual smile somehow managing to convey relief. "You can see us. We weren't sure the connection would work, but—" "My name is Willy," he stammered, the words escaping before he could think. My name is Willy." "Willy!" Chuck bounced with excitement. "Willy, we need your help. Something terrible has been happening to us. To all of us. And we think you're the only one who can—" "This isn't real." Willy backed away from the projector, shaking his head. "This is some kind of elaborate prank. Someone's playing footage of my own characters back at me. Very funny, whoever you are." But even as he said it, doubt crept in. The movements were too natural, too spontaneous. He'd animated Chuck for decades, knew every nuance of the character's expressions, every detail of his design. This wasn't recycled animation. This was Chuck, speaking words Willy had never written, moving in ways no animator had ever planned. "Willy," came Depsey's voice, softer now. "Please listen. Do you remember when you first drew me? I was supposed to be called Darby, but you changed it at the last minute because you thought it sounded too fancy." Willy's breath caught. That detail was in his earliest sketchbooks, notes he'd made before Darby became Depsey. No one else knew that. No archived footage would contain that information. "And Chuck," the rabbit continued, "you gave him that hat because you thought he looked too simple without it. But you worried it made him look too formal, so you had him tip it whenever he was excited." Chuck immediately demonstrated, tipping his black bowler with a grin. It was exactly right. The gesture Willy had conceived, but never formalized in any official documentation. "Lucy was supposed to be a coffee cup first," Chuck added eagerly. "But you changed her to a teacup, because coffee seemed too grown up for the show you wanted to make." Willy sank into his chair. These weren't random details from production notes. These were the private thoughts, the creative decisions he'd made alone in this very studio, the evolution of ideas that existed nowhere but in his memory. "If you're real," he said slowly, "tell me about the scene I'm working on right now." "The park pond," Chuck said immediately. "You've been working on it for hours. Depsey's swimming costume, the water droplets, making sure every background character has personality even though they're tiny." "The professor by the tree," Depsey added quietly. "You gave him spectacles, even though no one will be able to see them clearly. You said details matter, even the invisible ones." Willy looked down at his drawing, at the tiny professor figure with his barely visible wire rims. His hand was trembling. "This is impossible," he whispered. "There's something else," Chuck said, his voice growing heavy. "Our friend Lucy. She had this robot. This horrible little robot that made her doubt herself, made her think terrible things about us, about you. But you never drew any robot, did you?" The words hit him like a physical blow. "What robot? I never— All my characters are supposed to be happy. They're supposed to care about each other." "That's what we thought too," Chuck continued. "But someone's been adding things, changing things, making us do things we were never supposed to do." He paused, looking away from the projection. Lucy is gone now, Willy. She died trying to protect us from the corruption." "But that's impossible," Willy said, though his voice lacked conviction. "No one can change—" "Willy!" Depsey's voice cut through his protests, flat and serious in a way that made Willy's stomach clench. "I need to tell you something, and it's going to be hard to hear. I've been killing our friends." The world seemed to tilt. "What?" "I killed Mr. Muffins," Depsey said, each word deliberate and clear. I pushed him into a void called the Rift 20 years ago. I've eliminated 43 of your characters, Willy. 43 friends you created with love. He paused, his cartoon shoulders straightening as if bearing a weight. I did it following orders. I did it for payments of ink that protected me from consequences. I did it because I was told to. His voice grew steadier, more matter of fact. Those are the basic facts, Willy. I was an elimination agent. I received letters telling me who to kill, and I killed them. For 20 years. Willy's chair creaked as he leaned forward, staring at the projection. This couldn't be his Depsey. His Depsey was innocent, optimistic, a little clumsy but always trying to do right. His Depsey would never. "But you're supposed to be friends," he whispered. "You're supposed to help each other. You're supposed to be happy." "We were," Depsey said, and there were tears in his cartoon eyes. Tears Willy had never animated, emotions deeper than anything he'd ever written. "We were supposed to be happy, but someone changed that. Someone's been corrupting your work, Willy. They've been using us for something dark and terrible." The revelation hit like a sledgehammer. His characters, his artistic children, created from love and hope and the desire to bring joy into a world that had taken Sarah too soon, had been corrupted, violated, turned into something monstrous without his knowledge or consent. "Someone's been changing my work," he said, the words thick with growing fury. "For years," Chuck confirmed. "We think it started small, little changes here and there that we didn't notice. But it got worse. The robot Lucy mentioned, the ink that corrupted Depsey, the things that made us hurt each other instead of caring for each other." Willy stood, his hands clenching into fists. 40 years of animation, 40 years of pouring his heart into every frame, every gesture, every moment of joy he'd tried to create. These characters were his legacy, his gift to the world, his way of keeping Sarah's voice alive in a medium that could spread happiness to anyone with eyes to see. And someone had taken that. Someone had stolen his creations and twisted them into instruments of pain. "These are my characters," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Nobody corrupts what I created with love." The protective fury was pure and primal, the rage of a grandfather whose grandchildren had been threatened, an artist whose life's work had been desecrated. Every sleepless night, every cramped hand, every careful detail he'd crafted with love, all of it had been violated by forces he didn't understand. "Tell me everything," he said, moving closer to the projector. "I'm going to fix this. I don't know how, but I'm going to fix this." The light seemed to strengthen, the connection solidifying. Chuck bounced with hope, Lucy's porcelain gleamed with renewed life, and Depsey, corrupted, guilty Depsey, looked up with something that might have been redemption in his cartoon eyes. "Someone's been playing with my characters for a long time," Willy said, reaching for his pencils with hands that no longer trembled. "That ends now."